While this podcast isn't rated explicit, the content may not be suitable for younger listeners. Welcome to Sex for Saints, the Christian couple's guide to great sex. I'm your host, certified sex and marriage coach, Amanda Lauder. This is episode 362, Mutuality in the Sexual Relationship. Welcome to Sex for Saints, a podcast for Christian couples. My goal with this podcast is to help enlighten, educate, and inspire you to understand yourself, your spouse, and your sexuality better. I talk about sex in a way you probably haven't heard before. I'm bold, I'm direct, but I keep everything in line with my strong Christian values. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. So when it comes to sex in marriage, many couples unknowingly operate from a very one-sided or imbalanced dynamic. One partner may feel like they're always the one initiating, while the other holds the power to say yes or no. Or one person may feel like they're constantly meeting their spouse's needs, while their own are ignored. Sometimes sex becomes something one person gives and the other receives, rather than a shared experience that fulfills both. But there is a higher level of connection possible, one that requires mutuality. Dr. David Schnarch describes mutuality as what we want for our spouses becomes just as important as what we want for ourselves. You value their interests on par with yours. You can see merit in their positions, even when they contradict or interfere with your own. Going forward with your own self-development while being concerned with your partner's happiness and well-being, close quote. So this is a profound definition of what it means to love well, not just in marriage, but especially in the sexual relationship. Mutuality is not about losing yourself for the sake of your spouse. It's not about duty, obligation, or constantly giving in. It's also not about prioritizing yourself at the expense of your partner. Instead, mutuality is the delicate balance of honoring both your needs and your spouse's needs equally. It's the belief that their experience matters just as much as yours, not more, not less, but just as much. It means both of you are actively engaged in your own growth while also caring deeply about your partner's happiness and well-being. It's collaborative. So what does mutuality look like in a sexual relationship, and how can we cultivate more of it? Should we talk about that more? Let's dive in. So mutuality in sex is not just about fairness. It's not about keeping score or ensuring that everything is perfectly equal in every encounter. Instead, it's about valuing each other's experiences and working towards something meaningful together. So for a long time, sex has been taught from a very male-centric perspective. The focus has often been on male pleasure, male orgasm, and the idea that sex is primarily for the husband's benefit. And this has led to unhealthy dynamics where women feel obligated to meet their husband's sexual needs, often at the expense of their own pleasure and desire. So in response to this imbalance, many have shifted towards a female-centric view of sex that prioritizes the wife's pleasure above all else. The she comes first mentality is meant to correct past imbalances, but it can still miss the mark of true mutuality. When the focus becomes solely on ensuring the wife receives pleasure, the husband's experience can be devalued, and sex can still feel transactional rather than relational. So what we really want is mutuality. A sexual relationship where both partners' experiences are equally important, where both partners give and receive, where both partners are active participants in creating something meaningful together, and where neither partner is burdened with responsibility for the other's pleasure, yet both are deeply invested in each other's enjoyment. Mutuality means that pleasure, connection, and growth are shared rather than centered around one person. It's not about trading favors, keeping score, or finding an exact 50-50 balance in everything. Now, it does not mean one person always setting the terms while the other complies, or sacrificing your needs in order to keep the peace, or only having sex when both partners are equally excited, because let's be honest, desire doesn't always show up perfectly in sync. And it doesn't mean rigidly expecting each person to put in the exact same effort every single time. But mutuality does mean that both partners see sex as something for both of them, not just one of them. That each person values their spouse's pleasure, enjoyment, and experience as much as their own. And you can hold space for your spouse's needs, even when they contradict your own, and still find a way forward that feels good for both of you. For example, let's say one partner has a higher desire for sex while the other experiences desire less frequently. This is pretty common, right? In a non-mutual relationship, the higher desire spouse might feel constantly rejected, while the lower desire spouse feels pressured or guilty. Mutuality allows them to approach desire differences as a team rather than adversaries. So how do we do that? We'll talk about that shortly after our first break. If you're ready to transform your relationship and take your intimacy to the next level, it's time to check out coaching with me. Whether you're looking for personalized coaching in my women's membership, one-on-one guidance for men and women, or couples coaching, I have options designed to support you. And if you've looked into couples coaching before, now's the perfect time to revisit. I've lowered my prices, making it more accessible than ever. Don't wait to create the connection and intimacy you've always wanted. Learn more at amandalauder.com and click on Get Help in the menu. Now back to the show. All right, so one of the biggest challenges to mutuality in sex is mismatched desire. This is incredibly common, as we've talked about many times before. One spouse may crave sex frequently while the other is content with much less. And without mutuality, desire differences can often become a power struggle. The higher desire spouse might feel like they're constantly begging for sex, growing resentful when their desires aren't met. The lower desire spouse might feel pressured, dreading sex because it feels like an expectation rather than desire. Mutuality shifts the conversation from who's right to how do we create something that works for both of us. So instead of the higher desire spouse saying, "Why don't you ever want me?" they might say, "I know your desire is different than mine, but I really value sexual connection with you. Can we talk about what feels good for both of us?" Instead of the lower desire spouse thinking, "I have to do this to keep them happy," they might ask themselves, "How can I engage in a way that also honors my experience and desires?" Mutuality means both partners get to bring their full selves to the table. It's not about one person bending to the other's will. It's about creating a new dynamic where sex becomes something you both actively choose and enjoy. And this isn't a one-time conversation. It's many conversations happening over time, working towards a common goal. Another example of how mutuality works in relationships is balancing power dynamics in sex. Sex can easily become a space where power imbalances show up. If one person always initiates and the other always decides, power is lopsided. If one spouse feels like they have to have sex or risk disappointing their partner, there's a coercive dynamic at play, even if it's subtle and unspoken. Mutuality restores balance. It ensures that both partners feel equally valued and respected in their desires and boundaries, have agency and choice in their sexual relationship, and know that their experience is just as important as their spouse's. Imagine a couple where the husband always initiates sex and the wife rarely does. If he views this as a problem she needs to fix, that's not mutuality. If she feels guilty and forces herself to initiate just to make things even, that's not mutuality either. Mutuality would mean that the husband can express his desire for more initiation, but also respect that her sexuality may work differently. And the wife can explore what makes initiating difficult for her without feeling pressured to change overnight. She can look for ways that initiating feels authentic to her. When power is balanced, sex stops feeling like something one person gets from the other. Instead, it becomes a place of shared connection. Now, sometimes one person struggles to fully engage in sex because they feel disconnected from their body. This might happen due to trauma, stress, anxiety, depression, body image struggles, or even religious or cultural conditioning that makes sex feel shameful. Mutuality in these situations means that the other partner doesn't just push for sex to happen, but instead asks, how can I help you feel safe and present in your body? What do you need to fully enjoy this experience with me? A husband might slow down, focus on sensual connection, and help his wife feel safe before expecting arousal. A wife might learn how to reconnect with her own pleasure before trying to meet her husband's desires. This level of care deepens the emotional and physical connection between partners. Hey listeners, are you loving the tips and insights from Sex for Saints? Want to apply them to your own life? Join my Embrace You Elite Society membership. In this exclusive membership, you'll get access to personalized coaching, practical tools, and a supportive community of women all working towards enhancing their intimate lives. Ready to take your intimacy to the next level? Visit amandalauder.com and join today. Let's embrace a more fulfilling and intimate life together. Now back to the show. So let's talk about the benefits of cultivating mutuality in sex. Hopefully you're starting to see some of them already through what we've already talked about. But when mutuality becomes the foundation of sex, everything changes. Couples experience more desire because both people actually want to be there. They experience deeper emotional intimacy because sex is no longer one-sided. They experience better communication because both partners feel heard and valued. And they experience increased pleasure because each spouse is fully engaged in the experience. Sex stops feeling like a duty, an expectation, or a negotiation and starts becoming a place of connection, joy, and pleasure. So let's talk about some steps to cultivate more mutuality in your sex life. The first is to have honest conversations. Talk about what's working and what's not. Listen to your partner's perspective without getting defensive and without taking ownership over their feelings and experience. Their perspective is just as valid as your own. Number 2 is prioritize both partners' experiences. Value their pleasure as much as your own. Step 3 is to check in after sex. Ask, how was that for you? What was enjoyable? What would you like to change in the future? Step 4 is to challenge power imbalances. Make sure both people have a say in what happens. Sometimes we like to set the script ahead of time. This is what's on the table for tonight. This is what's off the table tonight. And then you get to choose what happens from there. And step 5, be patient with differences. Desire, initiation, and connection look different for everyone. So mutuality in sex is one of the greatest gifts that you can give your marriage. It means no one is left out, no one is pressured, and both experience sex as something fulfilling and connecting. It's actually what I work a lot on with my couples in our couples coaching because it's such an important part. So I want you to ask yourself today, is our sex life mutual? Or is it leaning toward one person's preferences more than the others? Now, one person might say, well, it's definitely leaning more towards yours, and the other person might think the opposite. And this is when we know that there are power imbalances on both sides and mutuality is needed. And if your sex life is not where you want it to be, what's one small step that you can take that will change that today? That can make a huge difference. All right, my friends, thanks so much for joining me today. Remember, love is a journey, not a destination. Stay committed, stay passionate, and stay connected. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Like what you're hearing on this podcast? Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Don't forget to leave me a review and share it with your friends.